network layer, right? So what are the different functionalities of the network layer? We have already seen about IP header and IP addresses and the subnet mask, and how these IP addresses and subnet mask are used to determine the network address, and how based on the network address how the optimum route is determined by various routing algorithms, and then the packet is forwarded to the next device on the route, right? And then the next device will in turn forward this packet to next device in the route, and up to etc. so on. And thus how this is how the packet is reaching from the source to destination machine as a sequence of hope to hope communication, right? So this is what the objective or the role of the network layer in TCP/IP. We have seen various algorithms, right, for routing the packet. We have seen static algorithms and dynamic algorithms, and we have seen distance vector and link state routing. And hopefully there are one or two topics remaining, like broad area gateway or routing, or intra-domain and inter-domain routing. So that probably Deepak sir will try to finish it off in the laboratory part of it, right? Because Deepak sir is taking this subject for a while, so I think it is good that he continue with the topic, continue with the flow, and then try to finish off all the topic during the lab sessions. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to start with the next topic, and that is called the TCP or the transport layer of a TCP/IP stack, right? So we talked about data link layer, we talked about physical layer, then we talked about data link layer, right? We seen how at a physical layer the signals are generated and transmitted, what are the different kinds of mediums we have. Then we talk about data link layer, and then we talk about how the data frame is generated, how the data frame is transmitted, how the medium access control mechanism works, how the multiple devices are transmitting and receiving data from the common channel. We also seen how this error correction happens at the data link layer, right? And we seen that how the communication between hope to hope or node to node communication happens with the help of the physical address, or that is called the MAC address, right? And then we moved up a little bit and we talked about the network layer, right? We said that how the communication between device to device happens in, right? And then how one device is identified in the other device using the IP addresses, right, over the network, right? And how the data is transmitted from one network to another network. So basically there are two types of communication, device to device communication. One is the direct communication where the source and destination devices are on the same network. The other is called the indirect communication where the source and destination devices are on the different network. So when source and destination devices are on the different network, how the actually routing algorithm takes place and how store and forward mechanism works to get the packet from the previous device and forward that packet to the next device, and then the next device will in turn forward that packet to the next device until the packet is not reaching to the destination. So that is basically called the stored and forward mechanism. So we have already seen that. Now we are going to talk about the transport layer functionalities of TCP for process to process communication, right? So the data link layer is responsible for node to node communication, that is called the next hop communication. The network layer is responsible for device to device communication, right? And the transport layer is basically responsible for process to process communication, right? So the delivery of packet is a part of the message from one process to another process. So basically it is not the machine which are communicating with each other, right? So hardware in standalone doesn't have any meaning, right? आपके पास computer है, you had a computer and it doesn't have any operating system use, right? So a device is usable, it makes sense only once you have the application softwares or various softwares being installed on that particular device, right? So when we say that one device is communicating with the other device, it is not actually the device, the hardware which is communicating, but it is the softwares which are residing inside the hardware which are communicating with each other, right? So how a software is represented in a computing machine? A software is represented as a running process in a computing machine, right? What is a software basically? A software is a bunch of programs, right? It's a collection of programs. And when you execute that software, basically the programs are converted into a running process and they are executed on the operating system, right? So every running program or every running software is considered as a process on the on that particular machine. And when I say one device is communicating with the other device, what do I mean exactly? that some program running on machine A is trying to communicate with another program which is running on machine B, right? So when I say process is simply nothing but it's a running instance of a program, that is called a process. So any running instance of a program or a software, right? I mean, when I say software, it's a bunch of programs right together, right? So I mean, you can abstract it at a software level, right? If you think so, but ultimately it is the running instance of a program. That is what you mean by a process, right? So one process which is executing on machine A is trying to communicate with another process which is executing on machine B. And how do we handle the communication between one process to another process? How do we deliver the message or the packets from one process to another process? How do we identify the processes running on machine A and processes running on machine B? How do we do that? So that is actually is the role of the transport layer. That is what actually the transport layer is all about, right? So this is what we are going to talk about here in this particular topic. Okay. So when I say that there are two processes which are communicating with each other, right, on the network. So these processes, one of the processes is actually assuming the role of actually performing a role of providing that data or providing that services, right? So when there is a communication happening, right, so one is requesting something and the other is providing something, right? So we say that in the process to process communication, one process is always requesting something and the other process is always providing something. So the process which is requesting something, it is sometimes called the client process, and the process which is providing something, right, some service or some data or something which is it is providing, that is called the server process. So when we talk about client process to process communication, we need to identify that who is the client and who is the server, who is requesting the data and who is providing the data. So this is the most general form, right? So sometimes it may happen that a client, one machine can only behave as a client and one machine can only behave as a server. So that is called the client server modality. Sometimes it may happen that you have both the process running on your machine. So sometimes a client process will request something, right? Sometimes A behaves as a client requesting something. Sometimes A behaves as a server providing something, right? So both the client process and the server process are running on each and every machine. Then this is sometimes called the peer-to-peer communication. But if machine A is only running the client process, machine B is only running the server process, then this kind of mechanism is called the client server mechanism, right? In peer-to-peer mechanism, we don't say that we don't have client and server, but what I mean to say is that in peer-to-peer communication, definitely we have client and server, but the machine A can behave as a client as well as it can behave as a server. So machine A is basically running two processes parallelly. One process is the client process and the other process is the server process. Both the process they are running parallelly. So at one point of time, it behaves as a client requesting something, and at the other point of time, it behaves as a server providing some service or some data to some other entity. So that is what we mean by the peer-to-peer communication. But anyway, in any case, when I say a process communicating with the other process, one process should always be identified as a client and one process should always be identified as a server, right? It is a different story that whether both the processes are running on two different machines or whether both the processes are running on the same machine or something like that, right? So this is sometimes called the peer-to-peer. Client server paradigm, we're also going to talk about what is multiplexing and demultiplexing. You already have heard this term multiplexing, demultiplexing in the theory of communication, right? Signal processing, where we combine multiple signal to be transmitted on a single channel, that is called multiplexing. And on the other hand, when we segregate the signal received on a common channel, that is called demultiplexing. So here we don't have a signal and channel, but rather what we have is the process coming through a common. When you talk about a computer network, a physical channel of the network, the physical wire is carrying the data from HTTP also. The same physical cable is also carrying data from FTP also. The same physical cable is also carrying data from some other services, SMTP also, right? So there are multiple services, right? Multiple types of processes which are running on the machine, and they all are using the same network. They all are using the same data link layer. They all are using the same physical cable. They all are using the same network, right? Network layer or IP protocol in order to transmit that data, right? So
combining the multiple data coming from multiple processes are multiplexed together to transmit to be so that they can be transmitted using a single channel or a single network, and then data received on the single channel, right, data received on the same network. When you receive a packet from the IP layer, right, you have to find out whether this packet is for HTTP, right? So that particular process is called from multiple process into a single outgoing flow. And when you receive data from a single incoming flow, then you have to separate the packets based on the process identifier. That is called demultiplexing. So we'll talk about what is multiplexing. Connection oriented service. At network layer, we discussed that the network layer only provides connection less service, and there is only one protocol called internet protocol or IP protocol, which is basically a connection less protocol, and that is the only protocol we have in TCP IP, which is actually providing all the services, right? So ultimately all the services at network layer, they are connection less, right? However, at the transport layer, so as I think if you remember, I already told you that if the network layer is not providing connection oriented, connection less service, it is a responsibility of the higher layers to take care of it, right? So therefore, since network layer is not maintaining any connections, or it is not maintaining any sessions, or it is not tracking any data, right, that which data is sent and whether the data is received by the peer end or not, it is not making any of such bookmarking. Therefore, it becomes a responsibility of the transport layer to do that. And therefore, at the transport layer, we have two different types of services. One is called the connection less service, and the other is called the connection oriented service. And therefore, we have two different protocols going at a transport layer. The connection less is called the UDP protocol, and the connection oriented is called the TCP protocol. So at transport layer, there are two major protocols. There are two main protocols rather. One is called the TCP protocol, which is providing you the connection oriented service, and the other is called the UDP protocol, which is providing you the connection less service. So we'll talk about that also, that how TCP is maintaining connection, how it is maintaining the track of which packets are delivered, which packets are not delivered, which packets are containing error or something, right? Similarly, we'll also talk about connection less version of which is very similar to network layer. The only thing it adds to it's actually same as the network layer service only. The only thing that it adds up is the process identifier. That's it, nothing else. Okay, so that is what we'll talk about there. And finally, we'll talk about the reliability and versus unreliable behavior of connection-less and connection-oriented service. Why you required a reliable service, in which cases you required a reliable service, and in which case you probably required an unreliable service. So these are the kind of topics which we're likely to cover in this discussion. Okay. So the transport layer is responsible for process-to-process delivery of data, right? Or the part of messages, right? So at data link layer, the bunch of messages is referred as the frame. At network layer, the bunch of messages is referred as the packet, and at the transport layer, the bunch of messages are referred as the segments, right? So we have the original data, right? I think we already discussed this in our previous lectures, right? That in the original data received from the application, right, is divided into chunks, right? These chunks are called segments, right? At transport layer, these are called segments. So transport layer basically receives the data, the entire data it is received from the application. So for example, you are running an FTP application, and an FTP application would like to transfer a 1 MB, 1 MB, or let's say 5 MB of file. Okay, then the transport layer receives the entire 5 MB file. But as it is, as you know, that it is not possible to transfer all the data at the same time. Why? Because there is a maximum limit that how many bytes you can transmit at a time. So we know that there is something called MTU, that is maximum transfer unit, and this maximum transfer unit at a data link layer limits us that okay, you can only transfer 500 bytes at a time, right? So accordingly, we have to divide our packets, right? And accordingly, we have to divide our data into such a segments in such a way that those segments can in turn be accommodated inside the packet, and those packet in turn can be accommodated inside the frame, right? So all 500 MB of data cannot be sent at one shot, or they cannot be sent at a single time. So what we need to do is we need to divide this data into chunks or bunches, right, which can be accommodated inside the IP packet, and that IP packet in turn can be accommodated inside the data link layer frames, right? So this division of data into chunks, right, this is called the process of segmentation, right? See, remember, segmentation is different than fragmentation. Segmentation happens at the transport layer, right, where it divides the original application data into chunks. That is called segmentation. And fragmentation happens at the IP layer, or it happens at the network layer. It is done by the IP protocol, where the single packet cannot be transmitted along the line, right? The capacity, the size of the packet is such that the line capacity or the MTU, right, is not possible to accommodate that packet entirely, right, because of the constraint of the maximum transfer unit, and therefore we need to divide the packet into sub packets. This particular process is called fragmentation, right? So I hope that the students should understand these are two different processes. One is fragmentation happening at the network layer, done by the IP protocol. And why it is required? Because the MTU is not able to transfer, or because of the MTU constraint, it is not possible to transfer the entire packet, and therefore we need to divide packet into sub packet. That is called fragmentation. What is segmentation? Segmentation is done at the transport layer. Why segmentation is done at the transport layer? Because the application data is generally very huge, very large, and it is not possible to put the entire application data inside a single packet, and therefore the application data needs to be divided into segments or chunks. We call it segments, right? So this particular process of dividing the application data into manageable chunks, which can be accommodated inside the packet, and that packet in turn can be accommodated inside the frame, that is called segmentation, right? So we'll talk about this process to process. So basically these are called segments. So the data segments are transferred from one process to another process, right? So that is how what is the responsibility of the transport layer, right? So basically transport layer receives the data from the process, divides the data into segments, and these segments are in turn handed over to the network layer. The network layer converts it into the packet. These packets are in turn handed over to the data link layer. The data link layer converts it into the frame, and then these frames are transmitted from current device to the next device to the next device, next to next device to the next device, and up to etc. so on, until the frames are not reaching onto the destination side. At the destination side, the frames are in turn the packet is extracted from the frame, and then the data is extracted from the packet, and this data is nothing but segments, and these segments are in turn combined together, right, in order to generate the original data back, and then that original data is in turn handed over to the process. See, please remember that the process is providing you the entire data intact, right? You also need to provide the data in an intact form to the receiving process, right? The process cannot handle data into chunks. So it is a responsibility of the transport layer to divide data into segments, and then at the receiving side, these segments are in turn combined together in order to form the original data back, and then this original data is in turn transferred to the application process, right? So this is the role of the transport layer again, right? So if you want to look at the kind of delivery here, then the data link layer is responsible for the node to node communication, or sometimes we call the immediate source to immediate destination communication. The network layer is responsible for network to device communication, or host to host communication, or in other words, you can also tell it as the actual source to actual destination. This is immediate source to immediate destination. So this immediate source is the machine, immediate destination is an intermediate device. Here immediate destination is the intermediate device, immediate source is also an intermediate device, right? So that is called the hope to hope or node to node communication, or immediate source to immediate destination communication. Whereas the network layer is responsible for host to host communication, or you can say actual source to actual destination communication, or device to device communication, right? So this is device to device, this is node to node, and finally we have the process to process communication. Why? Because it is not the device that communicates with each other, it is the processes which are running inside the device that are communicating with each other. So it may happen that at a time there are multiple processes running on, So the same network is used to provide communication between multiple processes running on the source machine with the multiple processes running on the destination machines, right? So most of the processes here, so we say that the one process is always identified as a client. The client is always something who is requesting certain service or certain data, and the other process which is actually providing that particular service or data, that is called the server machine. In today's operating system, we know that it is a multi-user multitasking operating system, so it is possible to run multiple processes at the same time on the same machine. So it may happen that one process in A is communicating with B, other process in A is communicating with C, the third process in A is communicating with D, and up to etc. so on. So it may be the case that device A is simultaneously communicating with B, C, and D, right? All these three machines are, this particular process is simultaneously communicating with that, right? So it may happen that multiple processes running on the client side are talking to multiple servers, right? So that is what it is. Similarly, a server, let us assume that this is a server. Similarly, a server process, there can also be multiple processes on the server. So one process is serving client A, the other process is serving client B, the third process is serving client C, and up to etc. so on. So the idea which I'm trying to float here is that a single client can communicate with multiple server at a time, right? Or a single client machine can communicate with multiple server machines, right? Or a single server machine can communicate with multiple client machine at the same time. And why this is so? Because of this. Because there are multiple instances of the processes, right? So there are multiple instances of the processes on the client machine which are talking to different server. Similarly, there are multiple instances of server process, right, on the server machine which are talking to different clients. So this both way it is possible, right? So because of this multitasking, multi-user environment, it is possible for a single client machine to have multiple processes, each process talking to a different server. And similarly, on the server machine also, it is possible to have multiple server processes where each server process is serving a different client, right? So remote computer can run several programs, right, as I said. So in order to do that now, we need to identify this thing, right? So one is, what is the remote machine, right? The host, right? So the source machine, the destination machine, right? So source machine is called the local, the client or which is sending the data, right? It is called the local host, right? Or a local machine. And the server to whom it is sending the data or to whom it is making a request, that is sometimes called the remote host, right? Or a remote machine, right? So you have a remote host and remote machine. So some process in the local host, that is called the local process. So local process in the local host is trying to communicate with the remote process which is there in the remote host, right? So normally the client is referred as the local machine and it is communicating with the server. So server is normally referred as the remote machine. So you have a local process running on the local machine trying to communicate with the remote process which is running on the remote machine, right? So you should be familiar yourself with this terminology, that local host, that is the client, local process, that is called the client process, remote host, usually it is the server, and remote process, that is called the server process, right? So how does the addressing takes place, right? So we already know how to identify the local host. We already know how to identify the remote host, right? We already know how to identify these devices, right? The local device and the remote device using IP addresses, right? So we have seen in detail that, how the IP addresses are being used and how they are divided into hierarchy and how the network addresses and host addresses are determined. So we know all this, everything, about IP addresses. So the IP addresses are basically used to identify the servers, right? The remote and the local host. But the process inside these machines are identified by another kind of addressing scheme, and that is basically called the port numbers, right? So port numbers is actually a 16-bit number, right? Which is used by the TCP/IP protocol stack. The transport layer of the TCP/IP protocol stack uses a unique 16-bit number, right? This 16-bit number is called the port number, and this port number is basically used to identify the different processes running on the local machine as well as different processes running on the remote machine, right? So we called it source port number and we called it destination port number, right? So when we try to talk about client server communication, the local host or the client machine has a source port number, right, and the remote machine has a destination port number. But this could reverse, right? When the client is making a request, client is a source, server is a destination, and when server is responding to this request, then server becomes a source and client becomes a destination, right? So you need to identify the port number for source, that is who has sent this packet or this data, and the port number for destination, that is who is going to receive this data, right, on the destination machine. So you have a source machine identified by source IP address, and then you have a source process identified by source port number. So you have a source IP address and source port number, which is identifying the source machine, and then you have a destination IP address and destination port number, which is used to identify the destination machine as well as the destination process. So the source port depends on the client software, right, whereas the destination ports are some, and most of the time they are well-known ports, right? What do you mean by well-known ports? Because see, the client is making a request to the server, so before actually anything happens, the client has to know what is the server process, whether the server process is running on the server. Two things the client has to know, right? अगर आपको किसी server के साथ communicate करना है, if you want to communicate with a server, for example, you want to communicate with Google server, let's say you want the Google home page, right? So two things you need to know. What is the address of the Google server, the host machine address, that is called the destination IP address. What is the destination IP address of the Google server? But knowing the IP address, it is not sufficient, because you are looking for a particular service, right? What you are looking on the Google server, you are looking for an HTML page which is corresponding to the website www.google.com. So you are looking for an index.html page which is corresponding to a website whose name is www.google.com. Okay, so so what I'm trying to say here is that I mean, you have to identify that process, like which process running on the Google server is actually trying to is actually capable of providing me with this data. Okay, so that process you have to also identify. So that process is running on which port number, that also you should be knowing it, right? तो आप जब गूगल का वेबसाइट एक्सेस करते हैं तो दो चीजें आपको पता होनी चाहिए, व्हाट इज द आईपी एड्रेस ऑफ दैट गूगल सर्वर एंड व्हाट इज द पोर्ट नंबर on which that web service or that web page service is running, that you have to identify, right? But when we are doing it, we do not provide any of this information, right? We neither provide the IP address nor we provide the port number on which the services is running in. So how this is happening? So in fact, it is happening behind the screen, right? So the IP address is automatically obtained from the domain name, right? So this is called the domain name. So when I type, when I type this www something, right? So when I type this www.ddu.ac.in, it's a domain name, right? And this domain name needs to be converted into an IP address first, right? Before making any request, this needs to be converted into an IP address first. So this conversion is done by a special application layer protocol called DNS, that is called the domain name system, right? So domain name system or DNS system allows you to convert the domain name into the IP address, and that is how you get the IP address, right? आपको IP address मिल गया मशीन का, लेकिन उस IP address के अंदर क्या एक्सेस करना है? Basically, I want to access the website of DDU, right? I want to access the web page of DDU. So which process running on the DDU server is capable of providing you this? So for that, you have to also identify the IP address, the port number. So that port number is well-known port number. Well-known port number means, we say that, okay, you don't have to remember this. Let us try to do that all the services which are providing website should always run on a single port number, right? क्योंकि DDU का website है, Google का website है, government websites है, there are so many websites. Every company is having a website. So instead of remembering the port number of all these websites, right? Imagine करो कि सबका अलग-अलग port number होता, तो Google का port number अलग होता, DDU का port number अलग होता, किसी और website का port number अलग होता. So in order to do that, you have to run another service. कि हाँ भाई मेरे को ये access करना है website, you give me the port number, because it is not possible for you as a client to remember the port number of all the websites. There are thousands and lakhs of websites. Is it possible for you to remember all the port numbers of all the websites? No. So what you need to do is either you have to create some kind of service, some kind of dictionary from where you can get this mapping. Okay, this is my website, give me the port number. Just like we are doing for IP address, right? This is my website name, give me the IP address, right? But instead of doing it, the better way is that the designers of application or TCP/IP has decided to make this port number a well-known port number, right? So we say that any server which is providing web service, right, or website services, we called it HTTP, that is called Hypertext Transport Protocol. So any server which is providing HTTP content or which is providing HTML pages or website, they are always running on the port number 80. So I don't have to worry about port number. The port number by default is always 80. So what I need to do is I just have to identify the IP address. Port number, if it is an HTTP service, port number is always 80. I don't have to go and ask anybody. It is well known, it is fixed. Similarly, when I'm trying to access FTP, it is assumed that the port number is always 21. Any remote server which is providing FTP service, the port number on which that process is running is always port number 21, right? This is fixed, this is well known, this is known to everybody. Therefore, it is called the well-known port number. और ये well-known क्यों रखा है? Because the user or the client do not have to remember different port numbers for different servers. Like one server is running FTP on 30 port number, the other service is running on 500 port number, the fourth service is running on 4000 port number. Then I have to remember, okay, the FTP server service of DDU is running on 30, FTP service of MS University is running on 50. I have to remember everything. So in order to avoid this dilemma that what is going to be the port number, what the designer has done, they have fixed the port number for certain services. So these are called well-known port numbers, right? So for FTP, whenever somebody is running an FTP process, the port number it is running in is always 21. Whenever somebody is running a telnet process, the telnet process is always running on the port number 23. Whenever somebody is running SMTP process, SMTP is nothing but send mail transfer protocol. So the email that you are sending from your machine, that is always done on the port number 25. So email you are sending not from the browser, but email you are sending from the client, right? From the mail client. What is a mail client? Mail client is like this, a Thunderbird, right? So this Thunderbird is actually a mail client software. So when I talk about SMTP protocol, see when you are using a web, right? So when I'm using this as sending mail, then basically what I'm doing, I'm accessing an HTTP service, and that HTTP service is in turn sending the mail. So this is not SMTP. SMTP service are normally done through the mail clients. So these kind of mail clients you have to set up, and then through those kind of mail clients you have to do it. So this is my mail client, you can see here. So this is a mail client software where I can directly send and receive mails without actually having any kind of website intermediary. So this is actually a client application which allows you to send emails, right? So we'll talk about that later on. But anyway, just to clear your confusion as we go, right? The SMTP services are always running on a fixed port number, right? So these are called the well-known port numbers. So total, how many port numbers we can have? So as the port number is a 16-bit field, we can have 0, 2, 2, 6, 5, 5, 3, 5. These are the total number of port numbers that we can have. So these total number of port numbers are basically divided. Category is called the well-known port numbers. The well-known port numbers are always assigned to well-known services which are running on the remote servers. Okay, well-known services क्या क्या है? जैसे FTP है, DNS है, HTTP है, right? SNTP है. These are the well-known services, right? These are the services which are commonly used by people. So these well-known services are always running on the well-known port numbers, right? Be it any server, चाहे वो Google का है, चाहे DDU का है, चाहे किसी भी और XYZ organization का server है, but if they are running FTP, they are always running on a well-known port number. If they are running HTTP, they are always running on the well-known port number, right? That is the convention. So that is how the port numbers are used. And so there is a well-known port number, then there are certain reserved port numbers, right? And then we have the third category that is called the dynamic port numbers. What is the dynamic port numbers? Dynamic port numbers are basically the port numbers which are used by the client machine, right? What is a client machine? A dynamic port number is randomly selected, right? So a client machine port number need not पर क्या है, server will definitely came to know the client the port number, because the communication would be initiated by client and not by the server. So when client initiates the communication, when the client makes a first request, right? When client makes a first request, client is providing both this information. What is the source port number? What is the destination port number? So say this is the client machine, which is actually running a daytime client. Daytime client means there is a facility called daytime server, and daytime server is actually providing you the current date and time, right? So network time service provider, right? So as you can see that when you start your machine, you get this date and time fetch from the internet, right? You might have already seen in your smartphones as well. If I hope if you might have used the older phones, right? जो कीपैड वाले फोन हुआ करते थे हमारे जमाने में, I don't know whether you have seen those phones today or not, but if you restart the phone, you have to set the clock, right? But in today's phones, you don't have to set the clock. I mean, you restart your smartphone, it will automatically take date and time. So where this coming in? So this is basically coming in using a network time service, from where there is a network time server which is actually providing the current date and current time just to synchronize your clock. So right now, the timing in my smartphone is 12:27. If you can see that in all your smartphones also, this would also be the timing 12:27, right? Because they all are synced to a maybe a common internet time or a common time server. So that is called the daytime or the time service provider. So there is how this is done. So there is a daytime server and there is a daytime client. So a daytime client is installed in our mobile phone or in our desktops. So this daytime client makes a request to the daytime server to provide the current date and time. So this first request is basically consists of both the source port number, right? That is who is sending this request. The client is sending the request. The client process is sending the request, and the client process is basically running on the port number 52000. So therefore, we say that this is a source port number, and to whom this request is made for? This request is made for a daytime server, and the daytime server process is running on the port number 13. So you have the source port number and you have the destination port number, and then the request goes to the server. So when the server receives the request, the server knows that, okay, somebody would like to know the current date and time. So here is the current date and time. It formulates a packet and then it sends the packet back to the client. But the question is, what is the port number of the client, right? Which process on the client machine is actually requesting it? So therefore you required a destination client address or destination client port. However, this is already available to you. So whatever was the source port number in the request, that becomes a destination port numbers in the response, right? तो ये जो source है वो destination बन जाएगा, जो destination है वो source बन जाएगा. So since this request has come on port number 52,000, I have to send the response back on the 52,000 port itself. So therefore, the port number of client need not to be well known. It can be any random value, right? How does the server came to know this? Server will came to know this value when the client makes a first request. So when the client makes a first request, it mentions the source port number, and that is how the server machine came to know that, okay, this particular client machine is actually, or this particular client process is actually running on this port number, and therefore the response is to be sent on this port number, right? So the source port number of the request becomes a destination port number of the response. The destination port number of the request becomes the source port number of the response. So that is how the communication between client and server takes place. Okay. So when the request is coming in, request has two parts, right? So when suppose this client is making a request, right? So client has to do two things. First, it has to identify that which is the machine, what is the device on which the daytime server is running in, and which process inside this device we are actually making a request. So when the request is received by the machine on the network layer, or let's say on the first, it will go to the physical layer. Physical layer will hand it over to the data link layer. Data link layer will check whether the MAC address mentioned in the frame is same as the MAC address of this machine. Yes, then it will hand it over to the network layer. The network layer will check whether the destination IP address is same as the IP address mentioned in the packet. Yes, so that is how you identify the device. Then it says that, okay, this packet is meant for this machine. But this machine is actually running multiple process A, B, C, D, E, F. There are so many processes running on this machine. So this packet received is of this machine, that is true. But for which process, right? So this process identification is happening at the third layer, where we try to see the port number. So first we'll try to see the IP address. So the network layer will try to see the IP address, match the IP address of the mentioned in the header with the IP address of the machine itself. If it is matching, then the packet is for this machine. But then within the machine, which service? So that service is identified by the port number. So that at third level, we do the comparison. We'll check whether the port number is there. What is the port number? Port number is 13. Then you check, is there any process running on port number 13? Is there any process in this machine running on port number 13? If there is no process running, then this is a bad request, right? You simply ignore it. But if there is a machine running, or if there is a process running, then you have to deliver that particular data to, or you have to deliver that request to that particular process, right? So that is how the processing happens at various layers, right? So the first comparison is based on MAC, second comparison is based on IP, and the third level of comparison is done on the port number. Remember, this third level of comparison is only done on the destination machine, right? Not on every machine, right? Whereas the MAC layer comparison is done on every node, right? The actual host. The IP layer comparison is also done on every intermediate device, just to determine what is going to be the next hop IP address. So that is the purpose, right? So that is how it is being carried out. So as I said, the Internet Assigned and Name and Number Authority, IANA, has divided the port numbers into two parts. One is called 021023. These are the well-known port numbers. So all the well-known services are coming from this well-known port numbers. So what is the idea? The idea is that no client process should use the well-known port number. If you are creating a client process, then you should not be creating a client process which is running on port number 80. Why? Because port number 80 is reserved for the HTTP service which is running on the remote server. Port number 80 is reserved for any HTTP service which is running on the remote server. So when you are creating a client server or client process should not use this port number. Right? These port numbers are only to be used by the server, well-known servers. So therefore we called it well-known port number. So client machine should not use these port numbers. Second thing is the registered port number. So registered port numbers are from 1024 to 49151. These port numbers. And again, the client should not use any of these port numbers. Right? Why? Because registered port numbers are generally they are say kind of reserved in the sense that they can be used for services, but that are not well-known services. For example, Apache. I mean, nowadays there are so many other services. Like for example, Apache Tomcat web services. There are some cloud services are also there. Right? So I mean, different companies will offer them different services which are not well known. I mean, not applicable to everybody. But say as a my company, I want to run a process which is automatically processing the invoices which are there in PDF, right? So what I want is that my client will upload the PDF, right? And that PDF will automatically processed by a service which is there in the backend. So this is a customized service, not a well-known service. So they should be using the registered port numbers, right? But again, we have to make sure that the client port numbers are different than the server port numbers. Otherwise, again, there would be a confusion. So this is for servers which are well-known. These are for the services which are well-known services. These are for the services that are not well-known, that are user-made or custom services. But these are both well-known as well as registered port numbers must be used by the server machines only. They should not be used by the client machine. So what are the processes? The client should use any port number that is from 49152 se leke 65535. These are the number of ports that the client is allowed to use. So whenever I start a client process, the client uses a port number which is generally randomly allocated to the client, right? But that random allocation is between these two. The random allocation is 49152 se lekar ke 65535. This is the random allocation that you have for the client processes. These are the port number which are available for client processes. These port numbers are available for well-known server processes, and these port numbers are available for custom-made or user-defined services, but they are server, right? They are not client. These port numbers are to be used for server processes, not for client processes. But those server processes are not well-known processes. They are custom processes. They are user-made processes, right? But we as an organization define them. It is not a well-known service. It is not applicable to everybody. It is only applicable to people in my organization, or it is only applicable to my clients, right? It's a very specific group of users. They are using these services. It is not a well-known service, right? So this is how the port numbers are divided, right? Well-known port numbers, registered port numbers, and dynamic port numbers. From that, the dynamic port numbers are the one that is allocated to clients, normally in a random fashion, right? Whenever you start a client process, it will automatically take a random port number which is available. One more thing is that a process running on the machine on a given port number, there cannot be any other process running on the same port number, right? एक मशीन के अंदर एक पोर्ट नंबर के ऊपर सिर्फ एक ही प्रोसेस रन हो सकती है. There cannot be two processes running on the same machine using the same port number. Otherwise, there would be confusion. For example, I received this packet on 52,000. This response is received on 52,000, and assume there are two processes running on 52,000 port. Then, how does the transport layer determine that this is given to process A or this is to be given to process B? So there should be a mechanism for the transport layer to segregate between process A and process B, and therefore we say that a process, two processes running on the same machine should not be using the same port number. They should be using different port numbers, right? Normally क्या होता है कि it is the port number and protocol combination. So you say that okay, UDP 52,000, TCP 52,000, right? So there are two processes. One process is UDP 52,000, and the second process is running on TCP 52,000. Is it differentiable? Yes, because one process is running a UDP client or UDP service, the other process is basically running a TCP service. So therefore, now it is possible for the transport layer to identify that okay, two processes are having 52,000, but one is a UDP and the other is TCP. So when you receive the packet from the structure of the packet, you came to know that okay, this packet is for UDP or this packet is for TCP. If the structure of the packet is for TCP, you hand it over to TCP 52,000. If the structure of the packet is UDP, then you hand it over to UDP 52,000. So now the processes running on the same machine should not have the same port number as well as same protocol type. If they are having different protocol type, then there is no confusion. Transport layer can always identify the protocol type based on the header format, right? जो पैकेट आप रिसीव करते हो, जो सेगमेंट आप रिसीव करते हो, वो सेगमेंट का हेडर होता है और वो हेडर का टाइप अलग अलग होगा. For UDP there would be a different header, for TCP there would be a different header, for SCTP there would be a different header, for any other process like RTP, real-time transport protocol, there would be a different header. So based on the header information of the received segment, transport layer can differentiate that whether this is for UDP or for TCP or for RTP or for SCTP, and then the port number will allow to identify the process uniquely, right? So should not have the same protocol and should not have the same port number. If they have same port number and different protocol, that is allowed, right? I can have two services both running on the same port number 52,000, but one is running on TCP, the other is running on UDP, third is running on SCTP, fourth is running on RTP, that is fine. But there should not be two processes both running on 52,000 port number and both running on TCP protocol. That is not allowed, right? Otherwise, the transport layer do not have any mechanism to differentiate between the client processes, right? So that is there. So dynamic port allocation normally happens like this. When you start a new process, the operating system checks whether which particular port number is available right now, right? For a given service. So let's say, for example, you try to run a TCP client, it will check what are the TCP ports available, and then it will allocate the one randomly, right? That is how normally it is done. But however, if you want to fix it, then it is also possible. You can fix the port number. You can say that, okay, I want to run my client on this port number only, right? So when you are trying to do this, you need to provide two information. You need to provide an IP address information to the client process, and you also need to provide the port number information to the client process, right? You need to say that, okay, I want to have run a client process which is having this IP, that is IP address of the client is obviously the local IP address, and this is the port number, right, for the client. And then you also need to specify the remote IP address and the remote port number as well, right? आप जिसको connect करना चाहते हो उस machine का IP address और उसका port number भी आपको specify करना पड़ेगा. So this port number and IP address together is called the socket address, right? So in the last lab, right, last lab of network computer network subject, you will see that an example of socket programming. You will see a C program which is communicating with another C program which is there on another machine. Mostly it would be a hello world kind of thing, that you will say hello and server will say hi or something like that, right? But you will understand that how you can specify the socket address. They will say that you have to specify the socket address for the remote machine. What do you mean by socket address for the remote machine? A socket address is the combination of IP address and port number. So IP and port together defines a unique address that is called the socket address, which mentions both the remote machine as well as it mentions the remote process. Okay, so that is what you mean by socket address. So I think this is clear. What is IP address, what is port number, and what is socket address, right? So we say the remote socket if it is remote address, and we'll say local socket if it is for the local IP address and local port number, that is called the local socket. And the remote socket means it is the remote IP address and the remote port number, right? So normally when we start the client process and we want to communicate with the server, then we have to provide the remote socket address, that we have to provide the IP address of the server, and we have to provide the port number of the service which we are trying to connect. Okay, so that is the concept of socket address. So now I was talking about multiplexing. So there are multiple processes running on the client machine. There are multiple processes running on the server machine, right, or the receiver, the source address. So the data is coming from these multiple processes, and all these data are basically handled by the IP address. So you can consider IP address is kind of a single flow, right? So IP address accumulates everything, all the segments. So this process actually hand over data to the transport layer. Transport layer divides it into segments, and these segments are in turn handed over to IP layer, and IP layer converts it into packets. So at IP layer, there is no distinction between the processes. So at IP layer, it is all packet. So this may be packet 1 may be containing data from process A, packet 2 may be containing data from process B, packet 3 may be containing data from process C, and so on. But IP layer do not differentiate between processes. IP layer will not say that, okay, this is packet of process A and this is packet of process B. For IP protocol or for IP layer or network layer, this is just a packet which I want to deliver somewhere. That's it. So all the different data segments are combined into a single flow of packet. So what you get at the input, multiple segments from different process. What you get in the output, a single flow of packets, where we do not differentiate or we do not discriminate between processes, right? So for IP layer, you have set of packets, the output single flow of packets. These set of packets are in turn given to data link layer. Data link layer will convert it into single flow of frames. So those are just frames. Now that frame may be carrying data from process A also. That frame may be carrying data from process B also. Let's say the first frame is carrying data from A, second frame is carrying data from B, third frame is again carrying data from A, fourth frame is carrying data from C. It can be anything. But data link layer does not differentiate between them. For data link layer, it is just bunch of frames. Frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, and frame 4, which they want to deliver to the next hop. Similarly, for packets, IP layer, it is just bunch of packets which they want to deliver to the destination machine, not the next hop. Now it is the actual destination machine. So therefore, we say that these differences are removed here in a single multiple data streams, right? So data is actually coming for multiple streams. For every process, there is one stream of data which is coming in, one flow of data which is coming in, and this flow is unified or it is converted into a unique flow of packets and frames. So therefore, this process is what is referred as multiplexing. I hope you understand the idea of multiplexing. You receive input from multiple channel, and then you send only the signal, you send it on the single output channel. That is called multiplexing, right? Normally there is a time division multiplexing, there is a frequency division multiplexing. Here it is multiplexing based on packets and frames, right? So you multiplex this data based on packets, right, where every packet contain data from one of the process or one of the streams. Okay, so you multiplex them into sequence of packets, or you multiplex them into sequence of frames. So multiple streams are converted into a unique flow. That is why it is called multiplexing. So it behaves like a multiplexer. Transport layer actually behaves like a multiplexer. And then on the receiving side, you receive a flow of packets, right? This flow of packets, you hand it over to the transport layer. So IP address says that, okay, this is packet 1, this is packet 2, this is packet 3, this is packet 4. But then it is a job of the transport layer to say that, okay, packet 1 is process A, packet 2 is process B, packet 3 is again process A, packet 4 is process C. So that single flow of packets is now required to be segregated into the process-wise flow. Single flow of packet is required to be segregated into the process-wise flow of data. Here, the process-wise flow of data is combined into the single flow of packets. Here, the single flow of packets is in turn segregated based on the process-wise flow of data. And who is doing Hello? Yes, there was a network, actually lost a network in between. Anyway, so this is the content of today's class. In the next class, now we'll start talking about what is a connectionless service and what is the connection-oriented service, right? So if you have any doubt related to today's section, then you are welcome. You can ask your doubts. Otherwise, you are free to leave the class. Any doubt related to TCP/IP, port number, process to process delivery, difference between process to process, host to host, and